Hey there, everybody, and welcome to Work Should Feel Good, the show where your career growth meets your real life. I'm your host, Diana Alt, and today my guest, Erica Reckamp, and I are going to dig into all things resumes, particularly her new research report about generative AI resume feedback from the job seeker perspective, not the expert resume writer perspective. Erica is an executive resume writer and job search advisor for the Captivators, positioning C-suite executive and board leaders for their next steps in their career. She also serves as an advisory board member for some job search AI startups and as a speaker in residence for a few different executive networking communities. Like some of that's a little bit I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. She has some of the stuff on her LinkedIn if you want to look at that later. So welcome to the show, Erica. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Me too. I always love talking to you.
I'm entertaining, but we're here in service of the people. We're going to have a good time talking, but we're here in service of the people. You're the fastest turnaround ever for me to say, I saw you do something. I must record you on a podcast immediately. Because I think it was like last Wednesday, you started talking about your researcher. Well, we're recording this on Tuesday, the 21st of October. And just last week, you released this report, or I first saw this report, and I was like, I must talk to Erica. This is critical. So it's usually a little bit of a lead time to coordinate with people. So thanks for calling.
No, Diana calls. I'm going to answer.
Oh, hear that, everybody? I want to kind of start with a little bit of your, like, the thing that I think is really who you are at your core, which is a writer. So all up and down your LinkedIn is writing, like way back since God was a boy. You got a college degree in English. And so I wanted to know, what is the first time you remember writing and loving it? Like, even if you were a little kid, like when do you remember starting, and like, what were you writing? What was the circumstances? Tell us about all
Definitely that. Writing as a child. I would write plays for my sister and my best friend. We would perform them and, we would charge like a nickel.
Right on.
And we thought we were really, wow, we're going to be able to buy so much candy at the dime store.
Of course. Oh, the dime store. That's so much fun. So creative writing, plays. Did you do other types of, like, what other kinds of writing?
Yeah, poetry. Even by, high school, I was publishing, right? It wasn't just like, I'm going to just do stuff in my high school. Like I was actually sending it out, getting it published in anthologies and in books. So I was really interested in it, but it's really interesting how that evolves. Like your love of story, your love of character and finding those elements of truth and having people experience something when they read your writing, and then how that evolves over time.
Did you like like research or like nonfiction, the kind of stuff you would have to do in like an English composition class that wasn't creative stuff? Did you enjoy that too? Or were you always more of a creative writing person?
That's a good question. I think I started getting more into, the nonfiction data side of things in late high school, university. And because I'm sure you would get to this, but once I reached university, I was tapped by professors to ghostwrite for them.
Oh, wow.
So they had publication requirements, right? Yeah. And meanwhile, they're trying to teach and they're trying to do their own research and passion projects, but they need to hit that publication quota. So they would say, hey, go to Northwestern Library, do this research for me, send me a couple chapters, or take a look at what I've already written, make it better. Or here are some interviews I did, transcribe them, make them sound cohesive, right? Find some themes, let's create some sort of collection. So in doing that, I started writing books about agriculture. Something that you wouldn't necessarily be like, yeah, I want to talk about fertilizer in Kenya. But
my dad was a farmer, so I think it's fun writing about agriculture.
You're like, I would read it.
And my mom was an English teacher at the community college level. So I grew up writing too, but not publishing like you did. I do remember the very first thing I ever wrote. I was in like the gifted and talented program when I was in elementary school. And when I was in first grade, I wrote a banger of a story called Billy and the Hamburgers. And I still
Oh,
have this in my house somewhere. It's like on laminated paper. Like your handwriting's so bad when you're 7 years old that the teacher has to write it. And then I illustrated it. It's like laminated. And basically, Billy ate too many hamburgers. It was his favorite
life
lunch.
lessons.
Life lessons. We need a vegetable from time to time. And then when I got in high school, I really liked writing, but I never considered myself like a creative writer. I was crushing it on like the persuasive writing and all
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff, which is super interesting because you and I both work on resumes. That's your
Right.
bread and butter. I do like holistic career coaching, and resumes are part of it. I do persuasion, part of a resume. You do storytelling, part of resume. Two sides of the same coin. So
Right.
I just want to nerd out about your writing because I think there's a lot of people that think, oh, well, most resume writers, they were recruiters. And so they got in it because they know
Well,
hiring. And I'm like, there's plenty of those. Some of us are just word nerds.
there's so many different sources of resume writers.
Yes.
There's so many different channels to that profession. Yeah, no, even from the resume writing perspective, that ghostwriting element is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be in your voice, not mine, not Chat
Yeah.
GPT's, right? There's a thorough analysis of, what's your preferred verb default? Is it
Yeah.
infinitives? Is it gerunds? Do you use serial comma, no serial comma? How do you tend to structure sentences? Do you interrupt yourself? Right? Some people like conceptually, they
Yeah.
just pile and pile and pile and pile. They get so excited. And then it turns into this really long run on sentence and they just are so into it, right? That's really captivating, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at voice, when we look at even how somebody uses prepositions can vary widely regionally. So if
Yeah.
I'm just writing what I think is quote unquote correct,
I get the
there's going
voice
to
of
be
people
a
differently.
missing.
I get the voice of people differently. I think about it differently. I think I'm natively doing what you're doing. And like the next resume I do, I have a new client and I'm working on his resume next week. He's a product manager, which is like my area that I was in last
Right.
before I left corporate. So I'm going to have like your little words in the back of my head whenever I do that. So you were writing as a kid, you sold plays for a nickel, you did all
Oh,
this
yeah.
stuff, and then you
Different.
went into like, how did you go from, I graduated with this English degree and then I moved forward and now I'm running this like executive C-suite board, resume, writing, all the things. How did you get
Sure.
there? Tell about
Sure.
that journey.
So
You
from the
don't
ghost,
write executive resumes when you're 22 years old and have them
uh,
actually, but
close.
but but not very many people do it.
Correct.
And
Correct.
do it effectively that
So,
young.
and I'm a huge weirdo because I'm actually a high school dropout.
Stop.
Yes.
Really?
So, yes. So our high school was a bit scary. There was some violence, some gang activity, and it was very intimidating to me, like
Oh,
just holding my
wow.
biology book, like, let me get my locker, stop beating him up. And I couldn't handle it. So I dropped out at 16. I tested into 3 different schools, full scholarship in their honors program. And I
Nice.
just said, I'm done. So I was in university very young. So I finished pretty young. And then, like I said, I was
Ah,
tapped to write people's books. I was ghostwriting. I wound up being an editor for the African Literature Association and ghostwriting for some Nobel Pulitzer Prize winners. Doing so, however, I felt a massive identity complex, right? Like, why is this white girl from the suburbs
writing. Yeah.
ghostwriting and like
What?
political interviews talking about the ethics of writing in a non-native language, like pretty dense
That's some
stuff,
stuff that today would get you canceled because somebody would
right?
find out that the white girl is writing all this stuff from the African
Well, but if someone's in
Association.
prison
Huh?
but if someone's in prison as a political dissident and
Yes.
they need to get their message out, that what happened would be, the magazine might send the interview questions to this person and they'd be like, my platform, how I speak, what I think, how I feel, write my responses.
Right on.
Because I can't. I'm being watched. I'm being right. So
Yeah.
I felt like I was continuing their mission and it was important work. However, again, I'm like, what am I doing? This feels very strange. So I just applied to a blind ad, right? Something we would tell somebody never to do. There was no information about the company. It's just writer. I was like, okay, I want to be a writer. I want to get paid.
Sure.
So it happened to be for Challenger Grand Christmas, which is
Oh,
like
okay. Yeah.
the premier outplacement for like the Mercedes of outplacement. I just went downtown, my naive little self, took their little writing test, was placed in the role. Within 2 years, I was the head of the writing department, proofing process, like the youngest
Nice.
leader in the company. I was being sent to California, to major outplacement projects, and it was very exciting, but I was ghostwriting. I was doing the exact same thing. I
I
was
think that's
taking
a really interesting point. Because something very interesting to me in the last 3 years or so that I've seen is that people are using the word ghostwriting maybe not more broadly than they did. Like if you talked about ghostwriting 5 years ago, the only thing that people were attributing ghostwriting to was books.
right.
And ghostwriters were never known. If they started showing up on the front, like now people will put their ghostwriter with like almost co-author credit on their books
Right.
sometimes. That's a
Right.
new
So
thing
I
that's
would be
happened.
mentioned in some acknowledgments in
Yes,
those
they'll either
early,
be in
but
the
that was the most.
acknowledgement, like Dan Sullivan has had, who's like a big executive coaching guy. One of my business consulting clients has worked with his organization. He has put who his ghostwriter was now as like co-author credit. Like it's changing. And we're also
It's more acceptable. Yeah.
acknowledging ghostwriting as like anytime someone's writing on your behalf, trying to get you onto paper, that's ghostwriting, whether it's a resume, social media posts, or whatever. It's been an
Right.
interesting evolution. So
Yes, but knowing the person's voice, knowing the person's mission, helping
yeah.
them execute in a way that they're not comfortable with, or that they would have, the ramp up time would prohibit them from achieving what they're trying to achieve.
Mhm. Yes.
Right. So in that way, I felt like I was doing that. I was helping people talk about their proudest professional moments in a really compelling way. So that's very rewarding.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with it in my 20s. So I've been doing this, 25 years. And this has been my joy.
It's a lot of fun. And I got laid off early in I got laid off twice in less than a year during the tech
Wow.
wreck. So I had gotten
Uh,
my master's. I had got my master's degree straight after my bachelor's. I'm barely, not even 2 years into my career, I got laid off the first time from a consulting firm because all the work dried up. Then I went to another consulting firm where a friend of mine from college worked there. I was there for 6 months, lost my job again. Although I did learn stuff in that 6 month stint
sure.
that served me for well over 10 years after that. So it was not a loss. But I didn't know a resume writer was a thing. I wrote my own resume in college. I figured out how to do it more compelling when I was 27 years old and laid off for the second time or however old I was. And it was really fascinating. And I realized that all that stuff I did in persuasive writing and composition in high school, where I got an award as best writer my senior year, worked on paper, started teaching my friends how to do it. And here I am.
And
So
from there,
I did not get trained by Challenger Grand Christmas. I got trained by the School of Hard Knocks. So at what point did you kind of abandon working for others as
sure.
a
Pretty
writer and
soon,
job search strategist?
pretty quickly. So I was a challenger for a few years before I had my first child. And so
Okay.
then I really just decided I wanted to be home.
Okay.
And so I was able to, even as I was packing up my desk, a couple of different executive advisors or coaches came up to me and said, I'm planning on leaving. I would like to build my own writing function. I would like to build my own
Mm,
company. I'm going to give you my email. So right away, I was helping other organizations build their writing function, serving as
nice.
part of their, coordinating their writing functions. And so it just grew from there to the point that I helped several different firms start that. Um, I worked with, even creating writers' dashboards, things like that, before I decided, I'm just going to make my own.
Yeah.
So,
I found it really interesting. Like I know a lot of people that do more volume of writing, because like my resume writing, I rarely do a standalone resume. Like I will, but that's just not how I work with people most often. But I know people that have done high volume writing, and I think I would go nuts if I was trying to manage a million little writing projects. Like my brain, I spent years in tech managing large enterprise software or product projects, not little tiny, what feels like ankle biter projects. What are some of the ways that you kept all of these writing projects on track? Like, how do you do that and stay sane? Because to me, it feels like so many tendrils to keep straight with a client base.
So one of the thing is just making sure you have all of their submissions, all of their projects, because there actually tend to be several projects. It's not usually just a resume. It's often LinkedIn profile, bios, marketing pieces, pitch decks, right? So keeping all of that clear and dated, because oftentimes also they'll come back 3 years later, 5 years later, 20 years later. So you want to make sure it's time stamped and revisions appropriately. That said, I do find each person so fascinating that I don't have problems kind of switching from one to the next. And maybe it's because of the personalization that's involved. It doesn't feel like the 200th widget, you know? So
it feels like a new, interesting person that you're doing stuff for.
Every time. And I've got, there was one year I did 1,500 resumes in a single year.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially when you're doing large scale outplacement layoffs, right? That's really easy to happen. But what that's also one of the challenges is, okay, well, if we just laid off 200 people essentially performing the same role in the same region, they're all going to hit the market at the same time. Each of them has to have distinctive content.
Yes.
They can't just bullet a job description, because otherwise all 200 people are going to be
They're just
competing
gonna look
against
the same. Like, why would I'm just gonna, Joe is on the top. Let's go. She's our person.
Exactly. So that's part of the challenge. That's part of the reason why I do enjoy it.
I find that like one of the first steps I do with people whenever I'm doing a resume, and I do this at various points in like job search programs. I do it in career development programs, but I have a little toy I call the superpowers worksheet. And what the short story that I'll unpack this in more detail on a solo episode maybe, but the whole thing with the superpowers worksheet is you go brainstorm about 12 to 15 people that are from a mix of backgrounds, including personal, like your best friend that couldn't even tell what you do for a job but knows you. Perfect person to put on this list.
Right.
And so I'll have people text them a very specific little question prompt, which is, what do you think what is my superpower? What do you think I do better than almost anybody else you know? Exactly that. Like, don't vary. Ask that. You're going to uncover different things. And so you get back like who the person is, because nobody responds, you're the best Python developer I've ever met, in a bubble. They might say that and then say other things. And if they do, I tell them, well, just go back and like, if Python didn't exist, what would your answer be? Because then we get into analytical, or you can deal with the people. And that's the differentiator right there.
Right. That's stage 2. First is, are you qualified?
Yeah.
Second stage is, what's your EQ? What's your,
exactly.
What makes you distinctive?
So very cool. One thing that I've always noticed is that you always refer to yourself as an advisor or a consultant where job searching is concerned. I've never heard you refer to yourself as a coach, I don't think.
Correct.
So talk to us about how you see the difference and why you choose the advisor and like you don't lean into the coach side.
Yeah. Right. So when I first started, again, 100 years ago, they were called counselors also. So it's gone through a couple of iterations. However, I don't, a lot of those tend to have HR background, tend to have recruiting background. I see myself more as an expert on what's gaining traction in the market, what are the different tactics in play. So I can discuss this is what, someone with a recruiting background would advise this. Someone with an HR background would advise this. An internal decision maker is going to be looking for this. If you are working in the market in the South, we see this happening. The risks of that are XYZ. The benefits of that are XYZ. Then it's ultimately the job seeker's choice
of what to do,
which tactics, which strategies they would like to employ, and they can make an informed decision, right? But I'm not going to come in and say, you have to do XYZ, because even if it is best practices, even if I do think that that's most appropriate to their search, if they're not on board, if that doesn't feel natural to them, it's not
they're not going to do it. So why bother?
Absolutely.
I look at it like, I feel like, especially in job search work that I do, there's a coaching part, which I look at as like, I'm trying to draw out your greatness, draw out what you actually want, that kind of stuff, that ICF stuff, which I actually have reservations about some of the cult around what coaching is. But I think that in job search, we're doing clients a disservice if we're not doing a combination of helping them articulate what they want.
Oh, absolutely.
And figuring out the right tactics for them. So,
well, through the reason that I start in the resume is, and I do go through pretty extensive conversations similar to your prompts that you're sending out: mission, vision, values, leadership style, EQ, non-negotiables, things I've learned through my career that I wouldn't want to have to relearn. That was painful, right? So that we are able to create a persuasive document or a targeted document that is able to help even the hiring authorities discern whether or not this person would thrive in this scenario, right? So we've talked about a lot of these processes, and I will, even if someone says, for example, it's very beneficial if you're job searching to post content on LinkedIn related to your area of expertise. If someone tells me I cannot, will not, I'm terrified, I'll say, okay, well, these are the other channels through which you can explore opportunities and generate leads. Let's try that for how long is your job search? How long do you have? Do you have 5 months? Do you have 7 months? Like, what is your goal? What do your finances allow?
6 months. Yeah.
Right? Well, it depends. Every person's different. Wherever they are, wherever their finances, if they've already been searching for 3 months before they come to you, right? There's different things that are coming into play. Then you might say, okay, try it your way for 1 month. Try it your way for 3 months. We'll see how much traction we're getting. If not, then let's add something else.
Oh, I love that you say it as an ad too, because if you tell people that, like, I only tell people to stop stuff that's destructive, or if they say, I can't add the constructive thing to the thing that's because I don't have time, then I'm like, you need to cut the destructive stuff in half. That's kind of how I look at it. And another thing I was going to loop back around, that whole superpowers worksheet is the only thing I send people in advance if I'm doing just a resume. I do everything else like via a pretty long intake call, because then I hear their words, just like you were saying earlier. I'm like, I hear their words and we can poke, and I'm just like, don't even think, don't write stuff down. I just riff.
I'm going to hear you talk.
We're going to be fine. I want to hear you talk. I'm going to draw it out. We record everything now. We have transcripts. It's fine. So
I'll do at least 45 minutes of that, if not another session. And then I'm looking at writing samples that are coming in.
Yeah. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit. You've worked on resumes at every level that there is, like from high school, new college grads, like entry level stuff, all the way up to C-suite, and I want to be on boards. Right. And I think that a lot of people, especially people who were maybe at a company for a long time, like they came in as a manager and then they got laid off as an SVP 12 years later. They don't understand the differences in how resumes are used and like how they should think about them and think about constructing them themselves or with someone else. So can you tell a little bit about, first off, across resumes, like what are some consistent things that are important? Pretty much no matter what your level, what are like the top couple of things people always need to make sure that that are in play?
Sure. Well, and that's one of the things we talked about in the report is like, what are the basic expectations of a resume that's going to work?
Mhm.
It needs to have your work history.
Weird, that. Not that weird functional stuff either that we were talking
Not a
about with
functional
the,
resume, reverse chronological,
what
with
a
titles, with dates, with company names, some sense of scope, right? What you actually did in this role, because titles don't necessarily indicate what you did, especially when companies start getting really creative with the titles. And then beyond that, we do want to show measurable impact, ideally numbers, dollars, percents. However, in
Mhm.
some roles, it can be very conceptual. And so then
Yeah,
it might be implemented a strategy or established a function, right?
yeah.
Things like that. That's fine, but ideally we would, numbers pop. Other things that we would expect to see would be active voice, strong language, strong verbs. We don't want it
Okay.
to sound like you were just watching things happen, which is
Helped
another
with blah, like, no.
helped, no assisted, no supported,
Yeah,
supervised even kind of sounds like you're watching, right? So we want to be really careful about what verbs we're using, even responsible for over and over and over again. Like cut that, go straight to the verb.
yeah.
Um, that's really effective, even in helping with like the noise ratio on the resume, which is essentially the overall word count in relationship to keywords, hard skills, soft skills, numbers, dollars, percents. If it's too fluffy, if it's too verbose, if it's too wordy, the impression is that someone's trying to hose you. So we
They're
do want
trying
to
to
try to
hide
keep
stuff. Yeah,
language tight.
yeah.
Yeah. We more and more we are expecting to see some sort of introductory section.
Mhm.
Some people call it an objective. Hopefully, people are not still using that. That's a very 1980s me type section, but sometimes people call it that, and it's actually still kind of a summary,
Can I
which
tell
is
you
more
what
so.
my like, one of my opinion things is?
Yes. So
I do not label that intro paragraph. It's a waste of a
the target
line.
title.
Why am I doing that? Why are we saying executive summary? Hello. In the year of our Lord 2025, people know the paragraph at the top is a summary of who you like what you're
And
about.
core competencies, same thing. Like we know this is the keyword bank.
So technical
You don't need to
I
label
do
that.
label technical skills, but like I
Sure.
think
Oh,
there's
yes.
like what this I told one client recently, pretend you only have 17 syllables like a haiku. Like, would this make it? No, it's not. It's not going to make it. So
Right.
it's not a haiku. It's 2 pages of your brilliance, but yeah. Okay, so that's the common stuff. Now, talk to me about some of the things that are different between, say, like a mid-level, I've been working 10 years, individual contributor,
Right.
someone that is like senior manager VP, and then like the C-suite. What are some of the differences that we see between those?
As we're leveling up. Okay, so sure. Mid-level individual contributor, we're looking at 10, 15 years of experience. Those types of roles, they tend to prefer candidates around that experience length. They don't tend to favor candidates with a lot more experience for mid-level roles because there are
Okay.
some concerns they'll be burned out, they'll get bored very quickly, etc. So even a lot of firms will just have that. If that tends to be where they're selling the most, they'll
Mhm.
tend to come up with blanket rules like only list 15 years of experience. Tech, it tends to be even less. There's more age discrimination in tech.
Mhm.
Skills time out more quickly. So a lot of times they'll truncate it even further to 10 years of experience. That said, if you have great experience at year 17 or 23, it's an invisible line. If
Yeah.
it's relevant, if you feel it's going to help you move the needle, start conversations, I would go ahead and include it.
Yeah.
Mid-level resumes should be focusing on one specific area of expertise.
Okay.
Those resumes are more likely to be subjected to AI sourcing and screening tools, candidate dashboards, applicant tracking systems. Not that we're writing specifically to the system, but they're more likely to be subjected to scoring and ranking mechanisms within those systems,
That's a
which
really helpful thing to talk about. And it's again, like we could talk all day about like auto reject and what is actually, who is actually putting eyeballs on. But I like the distinction of one target. I work with a lot of people in tech, and like half the job titles didn't exist 8 years ago. So there's a lot of nuance that I have to work through. But one thing that's really common in my world is that people will have had like project and program management experience, and they might also have had software engineering leadership experience. Those solve two different problem sets. They might work on the same thing. So I try to get to people like, what are the big picture problems that you want to position for? And then we choose how many resumes they need based on that. So I don't ever want to see project management and product management smashed together on the same resume. We're talking about like trying to position both of those on a resume. Of course,
okay, that's fair.
Things in the last 10 years, but like product management, owning and driving the vision of a product or portfolio of products is a hell of a lot different than delivering that thing on time, under budget, and with
scoping.
Exactly. So that's how I look at it. So talk to us then about that level of that kind of middle management sort of level that I talked about, like director. I think director is the wasteland where people don't know what to do. It's such a hard.
Yes, it is. It can be very complex, and you're on the cusp. You're a cusper in so many ways.
You're not quite the person that has to go through an executive recruiting firm, but you could start talking about it.
But depending on company size, depending on impact that you've had in prior roles, and depending on the organization, if it's a larger, they might see, okay, you were a senior director here, but now you're going to be a manager in this organization. So it can get really, it can get messy, especially with more organizations flattening right now. So when we get to senior director type roles, director type roles, we still want to focus on leadership and be talking about leadership style. Oftentimes what happens is people are promoted to the level of incompetence, right?
Dunning-Kruger, baby. Peter and Dunning. Those two.
So this, this person's doing a really great job. Let's keep pushing them up. Okay, now, oh dear, he does not know how to talk to people. Oh dear, we put him in a client meeting. He does not know how to speak to a client. Like whatever it might be, whatever threshold someone has hit that they find out there's a pretty evident weak spot. They still don't want to, undermine someone or subject someone to a demotion if at all possible. So oftentimes they'll kind of languish there for a while. So it's really important that we figure out what you like and don't like about leadership style and figure out a way to play to your strengths, hire to fill those gaps. So showing evidence of that, and then making sure that we continue to network up and down within an organization.
Sideways. So I talk to people a lot, specifically at like that thing that's a director level in most like large-ish, but not necessarily Fortune 500 companies, that when you're in management, when you're a manager, like especially a frontline manager, or maybe somebody that's got like a couple team leads with 2 or 3 people underneath them, you're talking about your ability to lead that set of people that are under you to execute. But when you start getting into like director VP, you have to talk about influencing sideways and then also a little bit of managing up. And then if the way I look at it is if you're like SVP or C-suite, if you're not talking about how you help the board make decisions that are on company strategy, something's very wrong. Do you see it the same, or like, what am I wrong about? Because you've done way more of these than me.
One of the things that's interesting is different org charts operate very differently. And sometimes you don't have access that you'd like to have. And oftentimes it's one of the most frequent points of complaint. If someone has gone through the interview process, assured you're going to report to the C-level person, you're going to have access to this person monthly, whatever, and it doesn't happen. Right. That can be a huge point of contention, but it is highly variable still. So I wouldn't necessarily view it as a risk unless it's known as a best practice within that.
Just frozen for a minute. That's all. So it happens. And we're doing a very, like I always say, I'm going for high content quality, low production value. So if we have some weirdness happen, that's fine.
Hiccups are
But
good.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. But my point is, like, the farther up you go, the more you have to be able to influence across and sideways and up. Whenever, and
And
you've got to demonstrate.
don't neglect down. Most people network up. They really focus on that upper echelon and they neglect the relationships, the mentoring underneath.
I think
More and
we're
more now that
Yeah, I think we may be talking about two different things, because I fully agree with you. You have to network every way. But when I look at a resume, one of the things I see a lot from people, hang on, I see people talking a lot about how they made the team under them execute and do really well, but they will neglect to talk about the broader influence that they had on their resume. And then they're wondering, why am I not getting called for the VP roles? Do you
all
see what I
important.
mean?
All important, yes. And one of the reason why I'm bringing up, earlier levels is because we've seen an increase in learning and development functions being cut. We're seeing HR being cut, right?
And so
So
your
what's
ability
happening
of
is if people don't talk about mentoring, developing, then it's a huge liability.
got it. That makes a lot of sense, and that's a really good trend. And I think, like, whenever I work with people on this, I always, if they've managed people and especially if they're trying to manage people again, I always make sure that there's something about the scope and scale. So you and I are saying the same thing. You just said it faster and better than I did, which is not surprising. Let's talk about the thing that touch quickly on the board resume.
Executive C-suite board. Yeah.
Yeah,
Once we
talk
get to
about that.
executive, the focus, the length, it can start to expand a bit. Once we're looking at executive level, they're looking more at your track record. So extending past 15 years is appropriate. Also, we really need to talk about leadership style and EQ. If we're not self-aware enough to know what type of leader you are, all of a sudden that becomes concerning. At director, senior director level, it's just fine to have a leadership type title. It's more okay. But if we're not able to talk about it in context, it's a problem. Once we hit C-suite, we're looking at a shift in value and content structuring because there's more of an emphasis on multidisciplinary expertise. So if we think about some of the famous leadership development programs, PepsiCo, GE, they have rotations, right? You spent some time in supply chain, some time in procurement, some time in biz dev, some time in acquisitions, so that you understand how all of these functions interplay to drive large scale business results.
And that's why, I talk to people about that too. I'm glad you brought that up, because I know a lot of people they'll be like in finance or whatever. They love some finance or operations. I'm like, especially if you ever want to go past CFO, you are never going to go from accounts receivable clerk only up through accounting and finance to CFO. You might be able to do that, especially if you're at one company for a long
real
time.
estate,
You
some
are
fleet, something.
never going to jump as that person from CFO to COO or CEO. It's not going to happen if you do not prove exposure to the other side.
Increasingly rare just to get the CFO without exposure to other functions.
The only time I see that is when somebody had literally the whole career at that company from
or it's a very small organization.
Yeah. There's not 7 layers. There's like 3 layers. So,
and then we've also got mission, vision, values wrapped in, not just leadership style. So it becomes a more built out in that top section. And then we've got themes throughout the resume. It's not just one topic. We have themes that are echoing through, right? For board resumes, now the emphasis shifts again. We're going to prioritize discussions of board and committee work so that we can show that we're familiar with the inner workings of those types of functions.
Can you talk about committee work a little bit? Because that's not something I hear people talk about a lot.
It's early stage. That's setting the stage for board contributions. It's indicating that you're able to see large scale initiatives that need to happen within an organization. And again, influence, maintain, earn buy-in, investment, and be able to self-advocate and affect change by gaining consensus and making sure that employees actually adopt whatever it is they're trying to impart to the organization. So board and committee work, both very valuable. We're mentioning that early and often. There could even be a board section right under the summary, as opposed to just starting with experience, depending on how much they've been exposed to. The language also shifts. It's not so tactical. It's broader, and we're talking more about steering and guiding as opposed to in the trenches delivery. Your functional track record also becomes important. Oftentimes board seats are selected based on type, right? So they might say, we need someone in cyber. If we're looking at the layout of the board, we've got 6 people, we've got 8 people. We want someone in legal. We want someone in cyber. We want someone from HR. We want someone from. So if you are able to articulate whatever it is that your sweet spot is, making sure that you're also making sure they're aware of that.
You're not just trying to get on a board. You're trying to effectively, formally or informally get a slot on the board. So you're not just trying to get on board. You're like, I did the whole compensation strategy for 2 Fortune 500 companies when I was the VP of comp and benefits at XYZ. I'm leaning hard into that. Cool. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Those are things that so many people, especially as they rise up, they don't know that what they did on their resume before does not work for the next level. We're going to talk about the study. That's what I promised people. We're finally getting to it. So you recently published a study that's called Generative AI Resume Feedback for Job Seekers. Beautiful SEO right there. Report. So I got a hold of this, and I can't even begin to tell you how many people. I sent it to my whole email list last week. I'm like, go read Erica.
Wow.
Yeah, you're all over, because just have it on the brain. Because every single week, whether I'm in something on LinkedIn or talking to a client or potential client, I hear this thing of, I don't know why this isn't working. I've updated this resume. I even used AI to help me do it. I hear it all the time.
Yep.
And it's a reasonable thing for people to want to do, because as many resume writers and career coaches there are, there's millions of job seekers at any point in time. So frame up this study quickly. Guys listening, this episode is going to be published in the middle of November. I did a solo episode where I went into some detail on this too. So if you want like more in-depth than Erica will probably give right now, you can go listen to that one. But frame up what led you to do this study and a little bit of what you found.
Sure. So ever since these generative AI tools, these AI resume builders have been coming out, my team and I have been testing them. We'll occasionally facilitate programs about some of the best use cases and some of the things to be careful of. As we continued to test them, year after year, we started seeing some concerning outcomes. The assumption is that the more we use these, the better they're going to be, and that they will become pretty seamless at informing our content. And there's a lot of trust that I'm seeing job seekers give to these platforms. However, one of the concerns is that the feedback, the basic assumptions, some of the things we talked about earlier, they don't seem to share those basic assumptions. That's concerning. And they're not hard, right? It's like every section should be labeled properly, like experience, education. It should contain work history. It should be written with strong verbs. Those should be things that we all agree on, even though we have very different takes on what might make a resume good or bad. Those basic fundamentals should exist. Those didn't seem to exist. The other thing that I continued to see was people subjecting their resumes to generative AI, and it was actually making the content worse. And
I've seen that a lot. I've seen that as a resume expert. I've seen it do that, because what a lot of people don't realize that generative AI tools, all the ones I've used anyway, and I'm mostly a ChatGPT girl, but I've used some others. They have a bias to tell you what they think you want to hear. You can sometimes get around that a little bit if you tell it to play devil's advocate or like push back on your whatever. You have to prompt it to do that, and sometimes it forgets. And so I have
Right.
witnessed when I was trying to be too perfectionistic with a resume I was writing for a client where the recommendations started to be like, wait, no, don't.
Getting muddier.
No, we're not doing that. So
Right. It's concerning.
yeah, it's an issue. So I was seeing anecdotally what you were seeing on a broader scale with more resumes. How did you define your study? And what did you actually you did what I think is a common prompt that I would also argue is the worst prompt ever.
Well, and our lens was for the general job seeker,
Yes.
because when we're facilitating these job search programs, these aren't people who've been through executive outplacement. These aren't people who are paying a resume writer or they're purchasing a package and they're getting guided feedback. These are people who are just trying to do the best that they can, trying to be competitive market. So if you're a general job seeker, you submit your resume and you just say something like, give me feedback on my resume.
And they don't know
right?
AI either. Like they may have
don't know
made their
prompt
grocery
engineering.
list. They don't.
Right. They're just asking for broad feedback. Am I doing something egregiously wrong? What should I do that I don't know? Right.
Yeah.
And again, we should have a fair amount of agreement on what that would be. Here's the challenge. Generative AI doesn't think. It's not truly creative. It's predictive, right? So
Yeah.
it's almost like you're at a meeting with, the guy who really didn't read the agenda and who doesn't really know the product that well, but he wants to be heard, right? So he's just saying words that he thinks sound good, right? Because it's predictive. And so I might just throw out like systematic desensitization, synergistic. Like, what are you talking about? We're talking about pricing. It doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily even discern what you've submitted. It's guessing what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So when somebody is giving this tool that level of authority, it can be really problematic.
Yeah. Yes, all of that. So you guys tested 8 tools with
Correct.
3 resumes. And
Yes.
the 8 tool, like they're listed in the report. I'm going to make sure a link to the report is in the show notes because I don't know how to not share the link to this report. I'm obsessed right now. But there's 8 tools: ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, DeepSeek, which is scary. Don't use that one.
Yes, it is.
It's gross security wise, and a few more.
Yes.
And you had some interesting findings. So the 3 resumes you did, tell about the 3 the 3 resumes that you chose to test and what the prompt was.
Yeah, sorry. So we purposely wanted to test resumes of different quality levels, right? Because again, people are going to run the gamut on how polished the original submission is going to be. So we had a fairly good resume, right? It's pretty strong. It's using the appropriate keywords. It's got metrics. Like it might not, people might do things differently, but at its core, this resume
It's
probably
like a solid
will
B+. When I looked at it, I was like, this is a solid B+.
Right.
That's kind of how I looked at it.
Then there's the fair resume, which maybe it didn't have as many metrics. Maybe it talked a little too much about the things that it gets really excited about. But it's okay, right? If the market is friendly, if they've got a strong lead, it's probably still going to perform for someone, but there's room for improvement. I wanted to see what kind of feedback are we going to get. And then we also submitted just a terrible piece
of garbage
content.
Right. The report has the resumes in it, you guys, and this is not 150 pages. It's like 11 pages of information and then the resumes. So it's pretty easy to digest. But it was god awful.
The resume was horrible. Right. It just had
basically god awful resume. Nice work.
Thank you. Stream of consciousness, like titles, dates, and there's like at this company, like it's almost narrative. And then it's got just like a couple lines of job description, all one horrible, chunky, tiny paragraph for each role. Yeah. Inconsistent typos, right? Just a mess, right? We know this is horrible. This should score terribly. They should have a lot of constructive feedback for me if this is what I'm sending into the system. So the surprising element was, and maybe not to you, but they provided a lot of criticism to all of the resumes,
What was the prompt? So
regardless
tell
of
tell the
caliber.
people the prompt that you used.
Give me feedback on my resume.
Okay. We'll get into why that's bad in a little bit, but like that is very
But common.
typical. Yeah, it's a
Right.
very common prompt people are actually using. So
Especially even if they've already paid for the resume and they're like, hey, I've got this. You know, Diana tells me it's good. Erica tells me it's good. Is it really? Dun, dun, dun. No matter what platform you're using, they're going to give you some negative feedback.
yes.
Here's the problem. A lot of the time, that negative feedback was completely incorrect, right? It would say,
Yes.
add an education section. There's already an education section. Or really destructive. So for example, one was nonprofit programming leader. That's exactly the role that this person was targeting. They said to position themselves as an organizational leader.
That's
Broad,
like
generic. Is
what?
that the key holder at McDonald's? Is that a
Right.
shoe salesman? Like, that's
Right.
horrible advice.
Yes.
Horrible. And then just tips that were completely unnecessary, right? Like saying you have to bullet everything. You don't. Or you have to only have one page. You
You
don't,
don't.
right? Completely depends on the candidate and the role they're targeting. In some cases, that's not enough information at all. So predominantly, I would say this is riskier to use this tool than it is to do some reading, some hanging out on LinkedIn and re-updating it yourself. Far
Yeah.
more conservative.
I found it to be fascinating because it's like when you read something that you know is a deep truth, but you didn't have the words. I was like, yes. It's like one of the most interesting findings for me that what did you call it? The help versus hinder gap is a
Yes.
section that's in the study. And so you evaluated and compared the number of pieces of good to neutral feedback with bad feedback for each
Right.
resume.
Destructive, derailing.
3 times as much bad feedback on the good resume as things that were actually constructive, guys.
And the
So,
good and the fair. And on many of the platforms gave zero constructive feedback.
ugh. So you would spend all your time going, well, they gave me 10 things. I don't know if I can do all 10, but I can do these 5, and you're still making it worse because none of it was constructive.
Right. Right. So very concerning. And what's more, the quote unquote constructive feedback was along these very basic lines.
Yeah.
Use these proper section headers, start with strong verbs, right? That if you looked at the most basic article on resume writing, you would get the same
Right.
information.
The terrible
Not
blogs
buried.
on Indeed would give you this
Right.
information.
Right. And it's not buried in destructive, misleading, damaging information.
Yeah, this is really important, especially when you consider, well, first off, a lot of people are just never going to hire a resume writer. Everybody is
Right.
being told to
Not in the budget.
use AI more. So we're being encouraged in every walk of our life to use AI more. So people think that they are doing the right, best thing for themselves. Many times in a period where they're financially vulnerable because of a layoff,
Right.
and then the tools across the board are making it worse. You've had an interesting thing. You and I were in the comments or DM, I don't know, one of the times we interacted in the last couple week or so. I asked you, did you evaluate any of the purpose-built resume writing tools? Because one would think those are going to be better, right? You know, hey, they specifically
They're
built this
designated.
So I know that wasn't officially part of the study, but it sounds like you have some anecdotal stuff.
Well, we do have more information. We do have more testing. As I said, we do these programs, we do these tests quarterly, annually. We've for years had a series of, if you're going to use a resume builder, what are the top ones? If you're going to use, generative AI to write a cover letter, which one should you use, right? So we have been testing these consistently. The problem with a lot of these, smaller targeted tools is they're not evolving at the same speed as these more in use LLMs, just because they're not getting as much of a data pool. So they're actually becoming worse in comparison with these larger
The
LLMs. Yes. Number one. Number two, a lot of them are trying to do more than just resume writing. Even if they're targeted resume writing, they're saying also like, I'm going to help you network. I'm going to help you track your applications. I'm going to help you. And by trying to do too many things, they're crashing.
They're doing
They
nothing
don't even
well.
work.
Yeah.
Right. So what used to be, we might say, try these three. Now it's like, okay, well, this old school resume builder that's actually just data mining works better than the designated tool. So not only in terms of volume, like I'm seeing more people use the large language models, but also in terms of performance, these are actually outperforming those smaller
It's
targeted
interesting
tools.
too. And the thing that I have not, I'll tell you what, like I have not tested as many of the purpose-built resume tools or like the job seeker platforms that have, the multiple functions, but I play around with ones when my clients ask me. There's a couple I fool with a couple times a year, and they're, in my opinion, for helping optimize or write resumes, all of them are getting worse. And why would I pay $20 or any amount of money a month to one of these tools whenever my Claude is doing it better?
Yes.
Even if I don't know how to use Claude, like the answer, if things are not going well with my resume and LLM, is not to go to one of these resume tools. It is to learn some of the ways to actually use Claude usefully for your resume, right?
Or check out a book from the library.
Or yeah,
Look at LinkedIn and learn a couple things.
Yeah, I have a webinar that I do. I just have it because why not? And I do it publicly a couple of times a year, usually, called How to Write a Resume That Gets Attention. And I'll actually put that in the show notes, guys. So when it's over on YouTube, you'll be able to have it for free. I don't even need your email. But that tells people what good looks like, because fundamentally what people are doing is they are using an LLM to optimize something and they don't even know what good looks like. So
right. Well, and then the danger is they'll turn to these resume builders and they look worse than what you submitted, or they look worse than the template you could have used. And I'm not a fan of templates because they kind of turn into a Procrustean bed where people are just cutting things and shoving it into, like they said 3 bullets, so I'm going to reduce it to 3 bullets, right? So I don't like them. And many of them, if you're getting from Etsy or Canva, they're a picture. So a lot of times the systems cannot read them. So I don't even love those, but you don't even get the aesthetics from these tools that you would hope to get.
That's true. Congratulations. Paste this in a Google Doc. It will do you no good. So when I work on a client for a resume for client, I will have a template, the container, the spots that I'm doing, and it's very loose. It doesn't care if there's 2 bullets or 12 bullets. It expands.
Right.
And then what I do is I build piece by piece. Okay, we're going to work on the executive summary now. Okay, we're going to work on this work experience for job 1, job 2. Okay, we're going to work on education. And then I build those pieces with my knowledge and the LLM, put it together, and then I start doing holistic reviews.
Well, and they have the luxury of your guidance to say, the most recent position should not be 1 line.
Right.
Right. Like that should be built out more. It's the most relevant.
Exactly.
That's where people are going to spend the most time. They have the benefit of your guidance in there. And if there's workforce development programs in your area, a real person who's offering a program, and you check their credentials, obviously, then yes, please prioritize that over what you would receive out of any sort of generative AI, any sort of tool.
So I came up with a couple things that I recommended to some of my people on that solo episode I mentioned. And I'm curious where I got it wrong, what you would add to it. So my 3 things were, if you're going to use an LLM to help with your resume, the first thing I suggested was giving it a target so that they know what you're going for. So whether that is a job posting you want to apply for, or a really succinct, like a really clear targeting statement. I want to be a senior product manager in a SaaS fintech company, series B or C. like that
Right.
kind of level. What do you think about that? Is that a good thing for them to do?
So one thing that I like to do is if you take several job postings and ask them to create a consolidated version of that, that can be
That's a good way
helpful.
too.
Because then we're not just signaling language with one organization, because it can vary. We're kind of recognizing that. And sometimes also there's overlapping targets. And as long as we've got overlapping keywords, that can be okay. It's not like I want to be a veterinarian and I might want to be a teacher. Like that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
But
if it's sales, business development, key accounts, like, yeah. So
okay,
I can
well,
enter,
I'll find 3 of those from the sector I want, put that together. Here's okay, that's
create
good.
a uniform, because it can only accept so many of them, especially if you're not logged in, can only accept so much information at a time. So if you have them create kind of a combined based on, your the top few that you're looking at, and then going from there, speaking to that as a target.
Very cool. Another thing that I said is to ask it to rate it. And here's where I'm going to go with this. So when I've worked through resumes myself, I will sometimes ask it to tell me, well, I'm mixing up 2 things. Let me step back for a second. It's always a good idea in prompt engineering, if you learn nothing else, learn to tell your LLM what you want it to be. So, and what you want the purpose to be. So as an example, put on your hat, pretend you're a technical recruiter in B2B SaaS, and you're evaluating this resume. Versus you are also the director of a product management. How are you going to look at it? Versus you're a peer in product management. So ask it how you want it to think. What role do you want it to be? Most of the time, people are trying to get it to be a recruiter. But just say, I want you to act as a technical recruiter hiring for talent in a B2B SaaS company. And then the third thing I suggest is asking it to rate on scale of 1 to 5, scale of 1 to 10, whatever makes sense, your likelihood of meeting the goal of the resume, which is to get called for an interview. So I've got my composite job search target thing. I'm telling it to act like a recruiter. Tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how likely I am to get called for an interview with this resume. That's how I actually do that with my clients and train them to that. What else? What should I stop doing in that? Like, what do you feel like?
Sure.
Anything you feel like is good?
One thing that, and this could be just a stylistic difference between the approach that you take and the approach I take, and it also could be related to the level of client that we might be working with. I don't spend too much time and energy worrying about what recruiters think. Reason being,
that's fair.
Reason being, if we're thinking of the hiring process, sourcers, recruiters, headhunters, HR executives, the people to whom you report, the people you work with every day, these are potentially the people weighing in on hiring decisions, right? Ultimately, our ultimate audience are those internal decision makers, and they are looking at very different things.
And that's why I said in mine that we want to tell it who to act like. So if you're a certain level, then you probably want to ask it, is the recruiter going to call me? But if you're at another level, it's going to be, oh, I'm trying to apply to be VP of finance. What's a CFO going to think of this? Right.
Well, and depending on the nature of the role, because if it's a pretty hot role, then yeah, recruiters are going to be knocking on your door. If it's something that, that maybe isn't as, so like if you're a customer success executive targeting startups, a lot of startups don't even know what that means. So you're going to have to explain what it is that you would hope to do for that organization. So targeting recruiters or hoping that AI sourcing tools are going to pick you up, it's probably not going to happen. But if we are targeting that language to speak to the priorities of internal decision makers, it's a completely different game. Now, recruiters, headhunters tend to really only look at 5 or 6 data points on the resume, right? They're looking at location, They're looking for within an hour radius of whatever would be considered on site because they see stronger retention rates for that. They're looking for industry because they still, even though we've got that push for skills-based hiring, there's still a whole lot of recruiters practicing poaching, especially from dinosaurs, Korn Ferry, Stuart Spencer. They're not changing their model, right? Then they're looking at tenure lengths. They're diagnosing for risk, and they can calibrate these systems to
oh my gosh, we could do a whole other episode just on.
Right. So they're looking at very different things. The internal decision makers are basically saying, I'm buried, please save me. Right. So do you have the functional expertise to do what I need you to do or do what I hate to do? And then can I stand working with you every day, which is where those EQ discussions come in.
Thanks for breaking that down. So really, I think if we like zoom out a little bit, we're still saying target. So you're suggesting a target is maybe a few job descriptions put together with a targeting, so you have a composite. Then the second thing is tell it to wear the hat of the person that needs to make decisions. So
within that organization.
Within the organization. So depending on your level, it could be more focused on a recruiter. And heck, it's cheap. Like go through to the first person, but then if you want to test another person that might be involved, that's fine too.
I've even had people enter, like a LinkedIn profile or come up with a personality profile on the people to whom they know they would report to.
That's cool.
Will this speak to this person?
Yeah. And then the last thing I was going to say, what I end up doing is I'll ask it for a little bit of like scale of 1 to 10, how likely am I going to get pulled in for the interview or shortlisted or whatever that goal is. And if you choose to do that, you must remember that you're never going to get a 10. You almost don't want a 10. It's kind of like if you use one of the resume scanning tools. By the time if you use like Teal or Job Scanner, the tools that are very well known as having scoring for your resume, usually if you get to 100, your resume is now unreadable because of the way they do it. What you're looking for is an improvement from where you started. So that fair resume may get a 5 out of 10, and then you take some of the advice, hopefully the good advice that you learn is good, and then you turn it into a 7. But
here's where it gets more problematic.
Oh.
We've had people do this. They'd say, okay, I'm going to implement these changes. Then you implement it, you run it through again. It says, oh, no, you should change it back to how you had it before. Or now you should change this again. Like it is programmed.
It never ends. That's the point. Yes.
Yes.
The thing that AI tools want to do when you ask it for help optimizing a resume, it's going to try to help optimizing. And I have a whole rant on the term optimizing that I will save for a whole other day. But you're looking to improve and get your stuff in front of people fast. If you're continuing to try to optimize and go from an 8 to an 8.5 to a 9 to a 10 that you're never going to get, you're passing by the opportunity to have that resume in front of people when it may be good enough. So
No, I wouldn't ask it to rank because I don't trust it. I don't trust its discernment on that level. Number one. And number two, we've seen an increase in people over customizing their resumes. And so then they're saying, okay, this person actually doesn't care about this role. They just submitted it to AI. And so then what happens is, there's 2,000 applicants, 200 have done the same thing. There are only so many tools to customize your resume. So it sounds exactly the same. And they're like, okay, well, if I really was on this person's target company list, the short list of 10, 25 companies, they would have taken the time to actually write it. They assume this is AI sludge. So we definitely don't want to get in that micromanagement cycle.
So that's good. So I think what I may take away from this is that if you're going to do a number, take it with a grain of salt. What you're trying to find out, if you asked it to do it at all, which it sounds like you think is a bad idea, I feel okay with how I do it as a resume writer, but y'all listen to Erica because she studied it more than me. If you're a lay person that doesn't really have that much AI and or resume expertise, and look for better. But the advice I think that's the best that you gave is go freaking watch a video or read a book or read some blogs from qualified people on what good looks like. And then you can recognize when your LLM is telling you bad and not take those pieces of advice. It's really pretty simple. So it's really pretty simple. Thank you so much for digging into all of that. I have to say, it was a joy to geek out about resumes. I do have a couple more questions before we go. These are kind of like my lightning round. That's not really a lightning round. It's stuff I like to ask all my guests. The first one is, what is the worst piece of career advice that you have ever received?
Oh, I think, I don't know that I think it's just a pet peeve of mine. One thing that's really tough that I see a lot is people tell you to network before you've actually finalized how you want to introduce yourself or your resume or your value offering. And because what happens is you burn through your contacts and they're like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Well, show me your resume. Oh, it's not ready.
Yeah.
So I actually think people need some time before they go out and start extend
I
introductions.
agree with you, but there's a small caveat that I'll say. Most people have a few work besties that are the ones that can handle the fact that, like, they're the people that you might even be getting feedback on where do you see my talents? Like those people that are really close to you, the best boss you ever had, the person that was your mentor. I think you can talk to those people early on if you've
To help
maintained
you
a
position.
relationship, because they help with clarifying that. But other than that small set of people, you need to at least, at a minimum, have a solid positioning statement, even if Erica or I is writing your resume and it'll be done in a week. The ability to say, this is what I'm after and why I'm good at it before you start digging further. That's how I look at it. So, but yeah, just
Right.
network. No.
Even knowing the stories that you want to tell, it's so helpful in those
Yes.
networking conversations. It's
Yes.
so much more fruitful.
Yes. What is a personal habit that you have that's helped you be successful?
You know, I think actually sounds really strange, but walking away. So sometimes when you get really entrenched in something, especially if you are an analytical person, you'll say, okay, I need a reset. So either
Yeah.
changing location, right? Like bringing your laptop to another room or saying like, okay, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes and like let this ruminate or let it go. And then coming back,
Walking
a lot of
away.
times that's when things break loose.
Yes. I've been working really hard to take breaks, like actually take a lunch, which I've been
Oh,
terrible at.
no.
But since I came back from medical leave, a little while ago, I've been trying really hard to do that. And it's made a big difference. The last one is, what is something you've changed your mind about lately? I stole this one from Adam Grant.
You've
Um,
changed. Okay, you know
Something you've
what?
changed your mind about.
Actually, this AI, because like I said, I've been an early adopter. My husband is an AI engineer. I can talk to him
Oh,
about
I
this
did
all
not know
day.
that. What?
Right. Yeah. And I've been on a number of boards dedicated to AI startups and how do we integrate job search best practices into these platforms to make sure that we're not misdirecting job seekers. And I'm seeing the quality degrade and it's very interesting. And I'm gonna, kind of keep my finger on it. But I think right now unfortunately, it's one of those things that we want to harness. We don't want to be left behind, but at the same time, it's really hurting some
We got to
people.
do a little Hippocratic oath for job search
First,
coaches,
do no
right?
harm.
Do
First,
no
do no
harm.
harm.
Well, I really appreciate that. And you're the first person I've talked to that has said that they trust AI less as they go on, like this degraded. So I think that's a really important thing to realize is that it's not all just magically getting better. Like on average, for a lot of tasks, yes, but that doesn't mean for every task, every tool, it's getting better. So,
Right. It's really interesting.
well, Erica, thanks. Erica, you're at thecaptivators.com is your website for your business. I tossed that up. And then also I have her LinkedIn. Erica-Reckamp.com is the end of her LinkedIn URL. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.